Welcome to Livorno. We opted for the 8.5-hour excursion to the Tuscany countryside. This included a stroll through the hill town of San Gimignano and lunch at a Tuscan farm. Details and pricing are presented at the end of this video. You start the bus trip with a great view of the old fort in Livorno, then on to the Tuscan countryside. Today was a very moody, overcast day, which provided a magnificent atmosphere with the low clouds and fog playing peekaboo with the rolling hillsides. When we reached San Gimignano, the red umbrellas were unveiled. Each of the ship's passengers has an umbrella in their room, and it was needed today. It was easy to find the group by the red umbrellas. We gather around the city wall's south entrance gate. San Gimignano is a medieval town high up on a hillside. As an American, learning about the extensive history was fascinating. It started in the 3rd century BC as an Etruscan village. Around the year 1000 AD, the town became controlled by the Catholic Church until 1199 AD. For the next 200 years, peace was disturbed by two feuding families who showed superiority by building tower houses. 72 tower houses were originally built, with 14 remaining. These tower houses are the highlight of the town, and you see your first one at the end of Main Street. The reason San Gimignano is preserved so well is in 1348 AD, the Black Death hit the town, killing half the population. With little subsequent development until the 19th century, it became a touristic town, and we became the latest tourist. We wandered the stone-paved streets with merchants on both sides, eager to sell their wares. The shopping objective for this town was a Pinocchio for the Christmas tree. The author of the children's tale drew upon his childhood in Tuscany, and the town of San Gimignano has embraced Pinocchio. Shopping was successful, as evidenced by our Christmas tree. We strolled as a group down the main street and were impressed by the doors embedded in the substantial stone building and the narrow passageways leading off to the rest of town. It is important to look back down the street to the entry gate and then forward to the impressive tower houses as we pass all the shops. We continued to find the first tower house to be very impressive. At this location in the street, it narrows down to a gate, but just off to the right there's a shrine. At the shrine, our tour guide was very good and moved us off of Main Street into the back alley, where we got views overlooking the fog-shrouded valley below. The moody fog was so appropriate for the medieval town. You could see the old stone houses contrasted by the vineyards in the distance. The alley wound around and dumped us off at the Piazza del Sistona, which had a series of beautiful towers in it. The multicolored stone buildings were lovely. Also in this area is the best gelato shop in Italy, according to our guide. In the spirit of international cooperation, we tried a scoop, and now definitely agree. Following the gelato, we proceeded forward through a small opening and burst upon a new plaza dominated by the St. Maria Assunta, a Catholic collegiate church. Also at this plaza, you have some very nice views of even more towers. To the left is a palace called Palazzo di Popolo. You walk down a passageway to a courtyard with some very nice frescoes. Some of the frescoes are religious. Some of them are coats of arms of those who have held public office in the town. You leave the courtyard under even more frescoes. It is now time to head to lunch. You take the same street back to the bus. This proved more difficult than expected, since we were now on free time and did not have the guide, so we hoped we did not make a wrong turn. Through my expert guidance, we found and reboarded the bus and headed off to our Farmhouse Winery for lunch. As we drove away, the town remained shrouded in fog. Once we arrived, we were presented a tour of the winery as we made our way to the dining room. First, we saw some of the lovely grounds. Then we got to see the storage tanks, cask area, and the bottling area. Lunch was a great experience. This was a very informal setting. They started out by bringing bread, olive oil, and balsamic vinegar. The balsamic vinegar was more special than any we have had before. Before we filled up on bread, they brought out roasted vegetables, which they passed around family style. The main service was the meat and cheese tray, which had great sausage and prosciutto, and felt very much like an Italian farmhouse lunch. As we were finishing lunch, the host conducted the wine tasting and showed off the wines they produce. They provided a tasting of quite a collection of wines, from a couple of very good Chiantis produced by different processes, a single vineyard Vigna de Sol, and a nice rosé made from traditionally Chianti grapes. We even had a taste of grappa. The wine tasting was very nice, but then we learned they make the balsamic vinegar themselves, and we decided we wanted a few bottles. We purchased them, packed them in socks, stuffed that in shoes, and found a safe place in the suitcase. With this protection, the bottles made it across the Atlantic. After our yummy lunch, we found a cozy spot on the patio. The fog was still around, making the view even more magical. Hillsides peeked out from the mist, only to fade away again. The quaint farmhouses on the hilltop belied their true purpose. They were working vineyards and orchards. The view was exactly what I imagined from a Tuscan scene. We boarded the bus and headed back to the ship. We glimpsed views of San Gimignano as we left the winery. As we wound down the road, we continued to see vineyards and orchards pass by. The Tuscan countryside was so very green and lush, and we were offered great views since the bus had to drive slowly on the windy roads. The roads were so narrow that we had a problem on a corner when we met another bus. The other bus had to back up to allow us to pass. This was more of a problem since there was a line of cars behind each of the buses. But the car drivers played fair and backed up as necessary. Each home we saw was surrounded by tall cypress trees, and some even had cypress trees lining their long driveways. Throughout our journey, we kept catching glimpses of San Gimignano and its towering towers. It was only from a distance that we truly appreciated the grandeur of these structures. As we got closer to the coast, we could see more farmland instead of vineyards, and we got a chance to see some umbrella pine trees, which were quite unique. We got back to the ship in good time today, so we had the opportunity to survey the harbor. We had driven through the historic port area and old fort, but seeing it from the upper deck of the ship provided more perspective. The top deck of the ship provided an excellent vantage point for an aerial view of the harbor. But it was time to leave the harbor and head to Rome. We slipped our lines and had a pilot boat escort us out of the harbor. We had a good look at the dry dock in the neighboring slip. Then we were on our way past the breakwater and lighthouses. As the pilot boat dropped away, we had a few gulls pick up the escort until we were clear of the breakwater. We settled into our balcony chair and watched the harbor fade away and the coastline fall into darkness as we headed to our next port. Details and pricing are presented at the end of this video.